And now, as part of this special programming covering the Chile's presidential elections, we are now contacting, and we have Arnold August with us in this special program. Arnold, this Sunday's morning, as you were referring to, social organizations and citizens were denouncing the lack of buses, the lack of transporting during the voting day. So this is a fierce sign facing a victory for Boric, or can you see this is a strategy from the right?
Yes, I think that these type of things, such as the lack of transportation in a country such as Chile, it's not an accident. You know, Chile is one of the wealthiest countries in Latin America in terms of its infrastructure in cities such as Santiago de Chile and all that. So how can this happen in such a country that all of a sudden all those buses that were supposed to have been mobilized to facilitate the right of Chilean citizens to vote in the elections, they suddenly became paralyzed, and they're just covering up their traces because the person responsible for transportation in the outgoing government just denied that this is taking place. And Piñera, as I just mentioned before, he says voting is very important. People should go out and vote, not making any reference at all to what is now known publicly, not only in Chile, but internationally, that there was a definite move on the part of his government to stop the poorest working class student sections of the population in cities such as Santiago de Chile from voting. So yes, it is, in my view, a definite specific activity that perhaps has been planned before, because according to the polls that I saw just a few days ago, the person leading the polls was Boric. You know, he was scheduled to be leading the polls. So it's quite possible that the bourgeoisie in Chile and their close allies in Washington started to organize this deliberate attempt to stop people from voting. And I just, as I'm waiting for you to continue my conversation with you, on this issue of lack of transportation, I'm seeing in my Twitter account, there are actually small demonstrations, local demonstrations in different localities in Santiago de Chile and elsewhere, and in which people are starting to demonstrate against the lack of transportation that was supposed to have been sent there to allow them to vote. Other we see also in the social media, people taking their cars and having a big sign outside the window of the car. If you want to vote, come on in my car, I'm going to take you to vote. This is where the situation has reached at this time in a country such as Chile, which has such a relatively strong transportation system. It's not an accident. And I always, when something is happening, I always look to CNN in English. You know why? CNN in English is basically the official arm of the Democratic Party, which is in power now, right? Now, while all this is going on, CNN in English is completely silent. That means they know that their candidate might lose. Their candidate, that is the Nazi right-wing candidate, might very well lose to the left candidate, Boric. And so they're quiet. There's another reason for them being quiet, is that there's actually some kind of a soft coup going on to hinder the very real possibility that Boric will become president. So of course, CNN covers their bases. They're not covering it. They're waiting to see what happens in order to provide Washington with the appropriate narrative in order to save the situation in Chile so that it serves the interests of the United States.
So, Arnold, we were seeing the return or the possible return to power of progressive forces in several Latin American countries. Beyond Chile, how could today's result, the outcome of these elections, could impact on the wider region?
Yes, I'm glad that you raised that, because I think the recent successes, for example, Venezuela won that very important elections November 21st for the governors and mayors and local legislations. You had the real important upset in Honduras, where the left-wing candidate, after 12 or 13 years of struggle against a U.S.-imposed coup against Mel Zelaya in 2000, a long time ago, they won in Honduras. In Peru, there was also a win for the left-wing candidate there, and there are other examples. Now, the point is, perhaps for them, for U.S. imperialism, Chile is really important. I guess you could say that, okay, they could let Honduras go, and let, Peru go, if you like, speak of that matter, but they cannot let Chile go. Chile is really important for U.S. imperialism in that area, as important as Colombia. And the United States, I am quite sure, will do anything to keep Chile from going into the pink tide, into the left-wing surge that is taking place in Latin America. And this way, I think they're very desperate in what they're doing now, but it's bound to backfire on them, because how can they explain to the people, international and international public opinion, that their ally in Santiago de Chile purposely organized a lack of transportation for people to vote? United States, who was, always the beacon on the hill for a democracy all over the world. But their main ally in Chile, that right-wing government there, they're actually stopping people from voting in those elections in Chile.
Also, Arnold, we were seeing several developments in these elections, and we want to ask you another question. In this case, we had several reports from the students that led the social unrest of 2019. They were saying they're rather Boric because it's the opposite of caste. We know caste is a Pinochet's adept, and also he's a follower of the right-wing ideas, and he's against the immigrants, he's against the LGBTQI community rights. But they were saying that Boric was not the radical leftist leader they needed. So do you think these people, the leaders of the revolt, the students, the young people of Chile, have a weight, have a decision in this election?
Just a second, that must be teleSUR from Caracas. I have to answer. Hello? Sorry. No, sorry, it wasn't. Sorry about that. Can you just repeat that question? I'm sorry, I'm doing two shows at the same time, English and Spanish. Can you mind repeating that question? Hello? Can you hear me?
So, Arnold,
Yeah,
if you need me, okay, I'm going to make you the question again. Arnold, Chile is, the young people of Chile was saying in earlier emissions, earlier broadcastings, that they're rather Boric because he's the opposite in this election. We see the polarized elections. He's the opposite of caste. But they were hoping for a leftist radical leader, more radical than Boric. In this case, do you think these young people, the Chile's youth, the people that led the protests, the social unrest of 2019, do you think they have a weight, they have a decision in this election?
I'm glad that you raised that question. There is actually a polemic going on because the people, those who led that student movement in 2019 and the political forces around them, they of course favored the communist candidate, which was Daniel Jadue, but he lost to Boric, and a lot of them feel betrayed because Boric should not have presented himself against Jadue. There's quite a polemic going on, whereby people are saying that, well, I'm not going to vote because my candidate didn't get in. Just a second, I might have to check it. Hello? No, I could. So they feel betrayed because their candidate didn't come in. And there is a polemic going on in Latin America now among certain Latin American intellectuals. And some of them are saying, well, I'm not going to vote for the lesser of two evils. I'm against both of them, Boric as well as caste. And I follow this very carefully. I think Atilio Boron made a very important point against that narrative. That is that, simplifying things, this one is not the lesser of two evils, and actually encouraging people not to vote. I think those who are suggesting that are making a serious mistake. And I agree with Atilio Boron's evaluation that one has to look at each country in a specific context. And this is Chile. What is important in Chile is that Boric and the allies with him, which include the Communist Party of Chile, defeat Cast at the polls and become a president of Chile.
So, Arnold, Chile is also in the process of redrafting its constitution. So, how this election's outcome could impact that process?
Well, of course, I think a lot is going to depend. For example, if a fraud takes place and Boric is stopped from becoming president of Chile, even though the way things look, he would have received the majority of votes, this will influence the whole political landscape, and it will push people even further along the path of the need to completely reconstruct, refound the Chilean political system and an entirely new constitution that completely eliminates the vestiges of Augusto Pinochet, which still exists in Chile. And so this thing is going to affect it. It's going to affect it a lot. And I think the outcome of this would be that it will have a positive effect on the Constituent Assembly. People will be even more motivated to have a brand new constitution, which the Chilean people deserve. Look at all the sacrifices that they held last June 2019 in their revolt against the neoliberal order, against Piñera at that time.
So we have a last question for you, Arnold. Preliminary counts are calling the election for Boric. Can we expect this to be the final outcome?
Those who are calling it to void the ballot, not to vote? Can you repeat that question, please?
Preliminary counts are calling an advantage for Boric. Even they are saying he's like 10 points ahead of Cast. Do you think this is the final outcome? This could be the final outcome?
Well, I think that according to polls even before the polls opened this morning, and as things develop during the day, I think that 5 or 10% advantage for Boric is very, very likely. And I think this is why the U.S. and its allies in Chile are so desperate to try and turn that tide back and maintain control over Chile. Now, of course, we know that, as I mentioned before, Boric is no Salvador Allende. At the same time, becoming president of Chile in this very difficult situation, including today's attempt to rig the elections, will open the path for the students, for the Communist Party, for revolutionary forces in Chile to move Chile to the left even more.
So we thank you, Arnold, for your presence and your criteria, as always, so certain and so polite here in From the South in teleSUR English.
Thank you.